Today we're talking to Dane Brugler of The Athletic. This is a follow-up to the quarterback video we did talking about his rankings, top 15 or so. Doing the same with running backs today. So if you're interested in checking out that quarterback video that is on the channel already, receiver will be posted sometime after this, tight end, O-line, etc. So check it out. Hit that subscribe button if you're new. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Dane Brugler, top 15 NFL running backs for the 2023 draft. Love to see your number one guy here at running back as we move on. Bijan Robinson from Texas. Couldn't complain about that. There's, I feel like, in this particular running back class, a flavor for everyone, let's say. I feel like there's so many different types. You know, you have the explosive home run threat that's also an incredible receiver in Jahmyr Gibbs. A-Chain is also big lightning in a bottle. Charbonnet is the truck. Evans is maybe the boomer bust guy from Ole Miss, former, five-star from TCU. Tank Bigsby is a player I'm super excited about too. And then we get to, the leader of the Texas locker room, Roschon Johnson. But I guess we'll start with number one, Bijan Robinson, one of, the craziest players I've ever seen in college. And what do you have to say about Bijan?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the top 10 players in this draft. He's tough when you do a mock draft though, and you try to figure out, okay, where's he going to go? There's just not many teams that need a running back and feel good about using a running back in the first round. So I know in my mock, I had him falling to 31 in the Eagles, which is just an absolute steal at that point. But there just aren't many landing spots, and so it's tough. But yeah, Bijan's one of the top 10 players in this class. I think when you look at all the running back specific things, the vision, the patience, the tempo, he's got that. He can make you miss with power, can make you miss with elusiveness. He's a very good receiver. I mean, they'd line him up in the slot and let him run, forget the running back route tree. He'd run wide receiver routes, run a post, and do all these things. And so Bijan Robinson is the total package. And if he does not go in the first round, somebody screwed up. So, but I really like Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's also a first round back. I don't know that he's going to go first round like Bijan, but I think he's a first round back, even though he is only 205 pounds. But he's so good as a receiver. He's so sudden with his feet that he makes defenders miss with their pursuit angles. It's just really impressive to watch. So he led Alabama in receiving this year. So he has that element to him to be a big time weapon. So I'm on board with both those guys in the first round. It'll be really interesting to see where they end up.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel exactly the same way. I think those would be the two running backs that, if I were a GM, I would be comfortable taking at the back end of the first round. We'll talk about draft philosophy briefly. It's almost become so popular to be anti-running back. And I think we've gone from, okay, these guys are being drafted a little bit too high. The value doesn't exactly work out. But when you can find a bona fide difference maker, especially in these top two guys that can be not only a great blocker at times, like we've seen, even last year with Dameon Pierce, who was tremendous in the Senior Bowl. Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs are fantastic receivers out of the backfield. There's a deep post that Bijan catches where he completely mosses a defender. You don't see that from a running back very often, unless his name is maybe Christian McCaffrey, but I don't really know that he's going up and high pointing the ball like Bijan did on that particular play. Jahmyr Gibbs is super fun. Is there a reason, if you were running a team, let's say, forget about Howie Roseman and the Eagles never taking a running back because they don't value certain positions, right? What is your philosophy in general on taking a running back? Would you consider one in the top 10? Let's say it's the perfect running back prospect. You know what you're getting. Let's say it's Adrian Peterson. Maybe this guy's not an incredible receiver, but you give him the ball, you know what you're getting. Adrian Peterson, top 10 guy back in 2007. Where does he go now?
Right.
Where would you take him now?
Yeah, I think the answer is a little bit different for each team because it depends on what the state of your roster is. Where are you in your roster construction? There are some teams where like the Texans, where they're still probably a year away from being a year away. And for them, I don't, probably doesn't make sense to take a running back in the first round when you're still building your offensive line, your defensive line, and several, key parts of your team. But there are other teams where, okay, the Eagles, with where they are, if Bijan is there at 10, I mean, I think it'd be crazy because they have the 10th pick and one of the final 4 picks. They'd be crazy to not consider him at that point, even though I understand taking a running back that early. You can find running backs later. There's no doubt. We've seen it time and time again, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, whatever. You can find those guys. but it's harder to find those guys. Let's not act like it's just, oh, we'll wait till the fifth round and we're guaranteed to
That's the
find someone
thing.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's easier said than done. And so if your philosophy is to wait to the fourth round and hope that Damian Pierce is there, then salute, whatever. That's you take your chances. I'm all for taking a running back in the first round if my roster is set up as such where I'm in a position where that's one of the final, not the final piece, but one of the final pieces that's going to help advance my team and affect the win-loss column. Now, I think people get confused with running backs that drafting him in the first round shouldn't be the issue. It's that second contract that should be the issue, where you're giving big time money to a running back after like Zeke Elliott's a perfect example. With the contract they gave him after draft 5 years, or it wasn't even that long when they had him from the first round. So I think that second contract, I'm with you. That's where it's a little tricky to pay a running back. But drafting one in the first round, no, I think it makes total sense for. But again, I think it depends on the state of your roster and where you were in your roster development.
Yeah, it seems crazy to me that people are so anti running back. Where you can say, if Bijan's sitting on the board, and I feel like people just might not be familiar with his game up to this point. You forget how easily overlooked some of these college players are when you have just fans of the pro game. You get the fifth-year option. You get them through maybe their entire athletic prime before the tread starts to catch up with them on the tires. I don't know. It seems ridiculous. I know the Giants are in a very tricky situation with Saquon Barkley right now, who it seems like they're going to try to bring back. But you wonder if that doesn't quickly become a disastrous situation, especially with his injury history. But that's a conversation for another time. There are a lot of good running backs, maybe outside the top 40 picks or so. You talk about Devon Achane, your number 3, Zach Charbonnet, Zach Evans, and then maybe Tank Bigsby before you get to that next tier of Roshan Johnson. You talk about rotational plus special teams impact with obviously Roshan is an incredible special teams player. How do you rank these running backs? What's what goes into it from 3 to 6? Because is it just the guy that you maybe place the highest grade to, or you value what they can do affect different facets of the game? Zach Evans maybe potential versus where he is right now. What goes into it?
Yeah, and it's tough because I'm not scouting for a specific scheme or
Yeah.
culture, and that's where it's tough because these are generalized rankings where it's you have to do it from a 30,000 foot view, and for me, like Devin Achane, he is. It'll be interesting to see how much he is, how much he weighs at the combine. He's listed at 185. That's obviously a red flag. But, if he can get up to 190, 195, we'll see. And it still runs a blazing time. He was a track athlete in college. Like Chris Johnson, when he was coming out of East Carolina, was 195 pounds. CJ Spiller, same type of thing. And he went top 10 back in the day. So I think it just depends on, where he is, what's that weight at. But I think he has, the ability to be a true playmaker for an offense. Whether he's catching the ball, whether he's, I wouldn't worry too much about workload with him. Just get the ball in his hands and he'll create. But that's where it gets tricky after that. I mean, Zach Charbonnet at 4, he has a lot of the things you want in terms of the vision, the patience, the balance. But you just wish he was a more dynamic athlete. You wish there was more burst there. You wish he was a more explosive. And that's why he probably doesn't go until the third round, is just because he doesn't have those explosive numbers. But he's such a good pass catcher, and he's so good carrying the ball with his vision that he's too good to drop too far because he's not an elite athlete. And then that's where it gets tricky a little bit with a guy like Zach Evans, who really is boom or bust, I think. I mean, there's a lot of things pointing to him not making it, just with stuff back from high school, and then some of his injury stuff. There are a lot of things that concern you with Zach Evans, but he's a really, really talented guy. And so Zach Evans is going to be a polarizing prospect. Tank Bigsby, I worry about the vision a little bit, but you see the power. You see, once he gets going, that acceleration is pretty impressive. So he's a guy that you like. Rashawn Johnson, you mentioned, he's you hit on it. Special teams is a big part of this and what he brings. Being a third down back, being a leader, a former quarterback, never complained once about his role. You love that. And I think more than in other positions, we'll see more fluctuation with the second and third tiers here at running back because these guys aren't like separated by a ton. It's just these little things. And whether it's at the combine or an all-star game, these guys can move up and down. And so like Tyjae Spears from Tulane reminds me a lot of James Cook from last year with the way he moves and the foot quickness, the explosive cutting skills. In this running back class, it'll stretch. I mean, I love Eric Gray, and he's my 13th running back right now. Eric Gray built low to the ground. You love the vision that he plays with. You love the contact balance, the way he can pinball off defenders and make guys miss, but also break tackles. So, I mean, we're talking about the 13th best running back according to my rankings, and I think he's a really quality pro. So this is a very good running back class, and that's something else that will hurt Bijan. The fact that this is a really good group, and teams will look at it and say, you know what? I could get a B-level tackle or an A-level running back here in the first round. I'm going to get the B-level tackle and take my chances with one of these running backs in the third or fourth round. And I totally understand that thinking, just from a roster construction standpoint.
Yeah, I think people are going to see Sean Tucker at 14 and take that as a slight against him. But pretty good running back, maybe not not as much of a threat as some of these other guys at the top. He's got great speed. Maybe he doesn't make guys miss enough in space.
That's it. Exactly. Average make you miss skills. And, I think there's some hip stiffness there. He makes too much contact with his own blockers. I think that, we talk about these guys for so long that I think it become, especially on Twitter, people would become accustomed with, he's a top 5 back in this class. But then, when, I think you really study the tape and you realize he's not, then people are shocked. And when they hear that, Jackson Smith and Jigba with wide receivers, I think people just were locked in that, he was more productive than Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. So he's obviously going to go, if not higher, right around the same range as those guys did last year. And the fact is, he's just not on the same level as a prospect. He's really, really good, but he's just a different type of prospect and not quite on that same level. And so when I told people back in October that, hey, some teams have a 3rd round grade on him, people lost their mind. But he still is a really good player, and I think has a good chance of going, if not late 1, early 2.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Twitter discourse. It's something else. It's just something I need to get further accustomed to. It's wild. I tweeted out earlier in January, maybe even earlier than that, about how I've come around on running backs, and I think there is a value, especially with the 5th-year option associated. Not to harp on that too much to go back to it. I was just reminded by Twitter, and I tweeted out, I want to say during the Chiefs game, and I said, why would you ever take a running back in the 1st round when you get a guy, what was Pacheco, a 7th round pick at Rutgers?
7th, yep.
Yeah. So when you can get Isaiah Pacheco. I tweeted that as a joke because the day previous I had said exactly the opposite, essentially, but with a lot more detail. And then I was getting roasted for that. I was getting roasted for a take I wasn't even serious about. You can't
that sums up Twitter right there.
You can't joke with these guys, and you can't say anything serious because anyway, it's ridiculous.